In 1932, the Australian military declared war on emus. Not as a metaphor, not as a publicity stunt, they deployed actual soldiers with actual machine guns to fight 20,000 flightless birds destroying wheat crops in Western Australia. The emus won decisively. This is somehow a true story, and it somehow gets worse from there. After World War I, Australia gave returning veterans farmland in Western Australia. Noble idea, terrible execution. Nobody mentioned the land came with 20,000 angry 6-foot-tall residents who had been migrating through that area for millennia. The emus arrived like clockwork every year, and they were absolutely not interested in coexisting with farmers. They treated wheat fields like buffets and fences like suggestions. By October 1932, the emu problem had escalated from nuisance to agricultural apocalypse. These birds demolished crops, shattered fences, and drank from water sources meant for livestock. One emu eats enough for several sheep, and there were thousands playing synchronized destruction derby across the farmland. The farmers were broke, desperate, and begging Perth for help. They probably expected pest control. They got the military instead. Someone in government had what seemed like a brilliant solution. Send in the army with machine guns. Because nothing says measured response like deploying the same firepower you would use against human combatants. The government approved Operation Emu with enthusiasm that would later haunt them. Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery got the assignment. His mission was straightforward: eliminate the emu threat. His confidence was sky high. His impending humiliation was inevitable. On November 2nd, the expedition rolled into Campion with 2 soldiers, 2 Lewis machine guns, and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. That is enough firepower to level a small army. The plan was textbook military strategy: locate emu concentrations, establish firing positions, open fire, collect dead birds. Simple, efficient, foolproof. The emus had not read that textbook and frankly did not care about military doctrine whatsoever. The first battle was a disaster, wrapped in embarrassment topped with failure. Soldiers spotted about 50 emus, set up an ambush, and opened fire. The Lewis guns could pump out 500 rounds per minute. The emus responded by scattering in every possible direction at 30 miles per hour like feathered shrapnel. They had apparently spent millions of years perfecting the ancient tactical maneuver of not standing still when things try to kill you. The soldiers hit maybe a dozen birds. The rest vanished into the wilderness like they had teleportation powers. Major Meredith quickly discovered he was fighting an enemy that evolution had been very generous to. Emus have thick skin, small vital organs, and the durability of armored personnel carriers. Soldiers reported needing multiple direct hits to drop a single bird. These things could absorb bullets that would kill humans and keep running full speed. They were basically dinosaur-descended murder chickens with natural body armor and zero fear. One soldier allegedly said shooting emus was like trying to kill small tanks. Somebody suggested mounting the machine gun on a truck to chase them down. This tactical innovation had the same energy as hunting rabbits with a bulldozer. The terrain was rough enough to rattle teeth loose, the truck broke down constantly, and emus could pivot faster than the vehicle could turn. When soldiers finally got close enough to fire, the birds split into multiple groups moving different directions. They were using guerrilla tactics without having attended a single military strategy seminar. The military was getting outmaneuvered by birds with walnut-sized brains. After 1 week of combat, the scoreboard was brutal. Thousands of bullets fired, maybe 50 emus dead. The math suggested they needed approximately 2,500 rounds per confirmed kill. For comparison, trained soldiers in actual warfare typically use far fewer bullets per enemy casualty. The emus were literally harder to kill than enemy soldiers. The military's pride was in shambles, their ammunition was depleted, and the emus were still everywhere doing the cha-cha through wheat fields. On November 8th, Major Meredith officially withdrew his forces. His report cited inadequate results, which is military speak for, "We got absolutely destroyed by oversized chickens." The farmers were apoplectic. They had been promised military intervention and received a week-long comedy show where the punchline was their continued financial ruin. The emus seemed to understand they had won because several farmers swore the birds started showing up in even larger groups afterward, rubbing it in as nature does. The political backlash was immediate and merciless. How do you explain to voters that trained soldiers with machine guns lost to birds? The answer is you cannot, but the government tried anyway. Under enormous pressure from farming communities, someone decided round 2 would definitely work better. Surely with more ammunition and improved tactics, the military could salvage some dignity. Narrator voice, they could not. On November 13th, the military returned with fresh supplies and wounded pride. They brought another 10,000 rounds and actual strategies this time: better camouflage, improved positioning, more patience. The emus brought their proven strategy: existing and not getting shot. The birds had somehow learned from round one because they stayed in smaller groups, moved unpredictably, and vanished before soldiers established effective firing positions. They were adapting faster than the military. The second campaign lasted through early December with marginally better results. The military killed roughly 300 emus using thousands upon thousands of bullets. That is still an absolutely catastrophic efficiency rating. They were burning through ammunition faster than accountants could calculate the cost, and the emu population barely noticed. For every bird that went down, dozens more continued their crop destruction campaign with renewed enthusiasm. It was like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon while the ocean actively mocked you. By December 10th, Major Meredith officially recommended complete withdrawal. In his final report, he noted that emus had proven remarkably difficult targets and continuing operations was not cost-effective. He did not write, "We got tactically humiliated by flightless birds," because military reports require diplomatic language, but everyone reading between the lines understood. The government agreed to terminate the operation. The Great Emu War ended with the emus holding their territory and the Australian military retreating in disgrace. The international press devoured this story like sharks smelling blood. British newspapers ran gleeful headlines about Australia losing to birds. Ornithologists worldwide pointed out that anyone who understood basic emu behavior could have predicted this exact outcome. The phrase "Emu War" became official, guaranteeing Australia would never live this down. Dominion Secretary Sir George Pearce faced brutal questioning in Parliament about deploying military resources against wildlife. His answers did not inspire confidence or reduce mockery. Back at the farms, life continued with the emu problem completely unsolved. Farmers went back to traditional methods: better fencing, regular hunting, common sense. These approaches actually worked because they did not involve using weapons designed for trench warfare against fast-moving targets in open terrain. The government eventually created a bounty system, paying civilians for each emu killed. This proved far more effective than military intervention and cost significantly less. Turns out financial incentives beat machine guns when your enemy can think. The emus continued their annual migration completely unbothered by their military victory. They had faced the Australian army and won through the complex strategy of moving fast and being hard to kill. No grand marshal planned their campaign. No general coordinated their movements. They just did what emus had done for millions of years: run away from danger, spread out when threatened, and survive. Sometimes the best military strategy is not having one and just being naturally difficult to murder. Major Meredith later wrote about the experience with what can only be described as grudging respect mixed with lingering trauma. He stated that if emus had a proper military command structure, they could face any army in the world. He essentially admitted that disorganized birds had outsmarted coordinated soldiers, using nothing but instinct and decent genetics. His honesty was admirable. His embarrassment was permanent. The report became a historical document proving that nature occasionally wins when humans make stupid decisions. The Great Emu War taught several important lessons. First, conventional military tactics do not apply when your enemy is small, fast, and designed by evolution to not die easily. Second, machine guns are excellent weapons for many purposes but terrible for wildlife control. Third, asking ornithologists before deploying the military is free and could have prevented this entire fiasco. Fourth, sometimes the proportional response to an agricultural problem is not the most dramatic one available. The emus taught these lessons thoroughly and without mercy. Australia eventually moved past the embarrassment the way people move past accidentally texting their boss instead of their friend, slowly, painfully, and knowing the internet will never forget. The story resurfaces every few years online, delighting new generations with its perfect blend of absurdity and historical documentation. The emus remain blissfully unaware they won a war because they are birds and have zero concept of military triumph. They just keep migrating, eating crops, and being frustratingly difficult to deal with. Their ignorance of their own victory somehow makes it funnier. The final tally tells the whole story. Emus deployed approximately 20,000. Emus killed maybe 500 across both attempts. Australian military pride remaining 0. International respect maintained negative. The mathematical reality is that Australia sent trained soldiers with military-grade weapons to fight birds and achieved roughly a 2.5% kill rate while spending enormous amounts of money and ammunition. Some wars cannot be won. This war should never have been declared. But here we are, decades later, still talking about the time Australia got tactically